Valentino Rossi, arguably, is going to struggle to get through in this session. Taka Nakagami, who've seen down this weekend.
Man, here he was so impressive last weekend in Nea Bastianini as a rookie.
Yeah.
The Ducati has that potential that he could stick a lap time in. Jorge Master for him, so a lot of pressure. He didn't want to be in that position again this weekend, but that's how it's ended up for him.
This man's been in the headlines.
But it was funny his retort then that Valentino was maybe a little bit sensitive, but Brad, he's not scared to let the brakes off and dive down the inside.
And so let's head over to commentary for this Q1 MotoGP from the Doha Grand Prix.
Thanks very much, Susie. To go through plus one other, but the fact is that plus one other is not easy to tell who it would be, so you have to get it right. And if there's
in the race on Sunday, less than 10 seconds off the win, so he knows how important qualifying is going to be for him as well. So you've got Bastian actually be in that top two at the end of this session.
Yeah, and if Nakagami or Marquez can pull something out.
I mean, they've both been on the deck in most sessions. Actually, it's been quite bad for them, hasn't it?
It's just not looking
anybody else, but here it's
just not an option.
Not an option at all.
Yeah, there is only one option.
Silly sandstorm tonight. I know there's supposed to be some wind around tomorrow. I'm just hoping it's sort of what is like what happened to
Marquez wrestling with the Honda every single time. It's just the same old stories, and when they get to this position for they're in there, for example, it's ideal, but you might have to because of how the allocations are working over the weekend, and that's where we're seeing that.
It is quite a unique track,
but it just looks nervous, the Honda. It just doesn't look right. Do fancy him to have worked something out to challenge for victory on Sunday, as he said in that interview to us before the start of the weekend.
4.7,
just where he was roughly during FP4 right before this session. Let's have a look at some of the other riders come through there. We've got our limits, and we've got our limits at this track. We've thrown everything at it, different frames, different setups, all kinds of. Hasn't suddenly dropped right to the back of the field again.
No, it's just been the longest 3 weeks for them, stuck out.
Danny Pedrosa's been testing at Portimao. He's got one at Jerez, that kind of thing already, so.
Yeah,
with Jorge Martin going through, you think, is there a chance of him sneaking through? Danilo Petrucci's someone who can take the brain out and leave it on the guns.
It looks good. He's over a quarter of a second up through the first 3 splits, just about getting a clean exit, which it looked.
That's a decent lap time for Mir. Takes him to the top of the timesheet. The problem is the two here. So he wants to try and make it as painless as possible. Petrucci into.
Oh, he's got 0.3 of a second over everybody, Gav. The fear is that it's attack, and he's one of the riders that we know can, as I mentioned earlier, can put a lap together and risk respectful. But to explain it in more detail, you know where the limits are. You've been riding around here, they've done. You can break on into the corner and you go past that limit, or what you think is the limit, and you risk that crash. That's what we talk about with me.
The main comment has been, though, he can't get the most out of a tyre on a one lap. He can't do a time attack. He said, I've done 12, as is him coming back in, isn't it? But Spargo says, I can't make that change yet and understand how a bike works.
You get all the information when you've got to go out cold with fresh tyres on and go straight to the limit, and like we've just talked about, got to carry more speed.
Just thinking now about Joan Mir back in the garage. This is the point where a Davide Brivio will say to him, look, we have to go. In my position here, I would say you have to go, because the most important thing is to get into Q2.
Riders that have got the potential to go faster than that lap time, it's not quite enough. If he'd another 10th on that, I think if he'd done it again,
it's not worth the risk, is it?
And waste the tyre off the back of it.
And only have one go in Q2.
Yeah. Warm, he knows what that limit feels like, and he's experienced. So it's not as bad. It's not ideal, but better than them. So Marini's going to want to jump on the back of him. In fact, actually, the two riders that are out there with him, I don't think Mir will be too bothered.
No. There's no Bastianini when he's leaving there with two. Is that saying 2 laps at it, do you think?
I wonder what's going on there. He's had some issues. That's an excuse. Something's going on.
Iker Lecuona in this one, you can see he's gone with a front medium tyre.
Okay, we want you to do your fastest ever lap, and we're going to stick a medium front in.
What's left in his allocation clearly as Pol Espargaro put it on the 2 pole positions, of course, on the KTM last year pole, 5th in the championship on the Austrian bike.
I'm not confident. Yes, the bike was moving around a lot, but he was expecting it. He knew what the bike was going to do. Hello, you did mention
the rules in terms of slow sectors in MotoGP, so I can't see any penalties coming for it. People just trying to find
Reason for him losing that factory Ducati ride last year, signing for KTM earlier, which worked out really well for him, but it's been a nightmare.
It's the top 4 in this session, so it'll be interesting to see how Polispargro finishes this lap. He's just about to come across the line.
And he's wide there, Gav, really wide.
What can he do on his second lap out on the tyre? Meanwhile, Danilo Petrucci. If Petrucci can get out of third gear this week. Petrucci currently in third place, but he goes ahead of his factory teammates. Binder hasn't clocked up the third sector here. I'm just wondering if something's happened to him.
Oh, he's there.
Oh, he is in the final corner now.
Marini!
Ooh,
Wow!
we weren't talking about him, were we?
We didn't mention him.
Tell you what, it was close. Back-to-back races in Losail, and Polispargro is under through the second sector. He drops back in sector 3, however.
We can see all these red indicators. That means all the riders, how many are there? 5 riders they've gone through the first part of the track fast.
Espargaro just misses out on Marini's time by 9,000ths of a second, but it looks like as the checker flag goes out, some of the names we mentioned, Luca Marini's on another fast lap, Taka Nakagami, Mia has to put this lap in.
Yeah, Mia's on a great sector to go, the last sector.
Yeah, and Oliveira is fast also. Perfect person to follow. He's the only riding indicators coming up. He's going to be 10th at best in this session. The quota improved. Nakagami up to 4th. Oliveira briefly top 54.2, and it's the 53.9, however, of Joan Mir that is going to seal a... Polispargro isn't going to improve on 5th place in this session.
Oh, look at Rossi, he's 11.
Just tying themselves up in knots.
Yeah, just got completely lost with the setting. That can happen, Gav.
When you've been here so many days, I reckon we're going to start reading a new script. However, the world champion is back in Q2 as he managed... I've got the tyres here. He made a few barbs at Michelin, didn't he, over the last week?
Yeah, he's basically saying that...
He's done that, hasn't he? And you feel, if he can be in the mix at the start of a race, that actually... he can mix it up. Written off this race, to have him going through into Q2 suggests that when we do get back to Europe, and by 8,000ths of a second, Luca Marini was almost through to Q2. Yeah. It wasn't the case, however. Miguel Oliveira.
What allows him that kind of ability to claw back any gap Yamaha may pull through the flowing section of the racetrack. He sounds confident with the
speed and the straights and the twisty bits effectively between the Yamahas and the Ducatis. We've got 4 of the Ducatis.
Fantastic MotoGP rider. His size, his stature, he's stocky, he's strong, he's aggressive, he hangs off really well, and he looks good. Direct qualification, flying the flag for Honda as test rider, but that tip-off, when he was starting to claw his way up the order, he was having a good free practice 4 session, losing the...
And going out for Q2 as they all start to head out, and this is the man who has been fastest so far this weekend, Jack Miller.
1 KTM for Miguel Oliveira, and we have 4 Ducatis, 2 Suzukis. Qualified session of the year.
Sorry, Gav, Miller looks fired up. Did you see him then? I love to see that. He was hitting himself, punching his plan of how they're going to attack this one-off lap. But when you get someone like Miller, he's got that sort of personality, hasn't he? He thrives. And
clearly, qualifying is not as important for the Ducatis. Because they know they're going to start well. Yeah. He said it's more a case of pride. Yeah, red lines from FB 1, 2 and 3. Miller on top from Bagnaia in second. Zarco in third. Are in the mix, but Jorge Martin, the 52.7 we saw for Pecco Bagnaia last week when he took pole position in that new all-time lap record.
Or even a 52 like we saw Pecco do last Saturday. You'll be down. I'm sorry.
The U set maybe from the previous session. Jack Miller already, you can see just by his body language as he went into... You weren't with us earlier, there was a bit of a sandstorm, strong wind around the track.
A bit of a sandstorm?
A bit of one, not a full one. The wind does drop over there in Doha, so that's good news for everybody concerned. They can turn the Ducati rod. 1 lap pace wasn't there, but he'll want to be right in the mix because you feel that Frankie's the sort of rider, if he did... I always love the idea of Lorenzo riding with his fingertips.
Yeah. And it's so true because that's what he did. You could see it.
So we get our first look at the benchmark here in Q2 for the Doha Grand Prix. Martin is fastest on the second of the Pramac bikes.
Jorge Martin, he means business this weekend. When he was world champion, he was a pole hound, and He got a handful in Moto2 as well, so he's brought that qualifying form forward with him.
That was the one that caused them a few issues last week. We'll go on board with Maverick Vinales, his first lap, 6th place. And Vinales, the question, can he make sure that he's up there on the grid today? You'd think so. Maverick can put in a 1 lap. Maverick should. Espargaro has any teeth left, the way he grits them together. Always brings something out in qualifying. Here he comes up towards turn 50.
Calmer rider on it, but that allows you to be like that when you've got a faster motorcycle.
On a 53.7. Well, that's impressive from Martin. He's right in the mix. Watch out for Jack Miller, though. Out of the final corner mile. Fabio Quartararo is through in the 3rd sector up there. Last week's poleman Pecco Bagnaia goes...
Not much, so that's good to see.
In terms of top speeds, 349 in terms of top speeds. So you think maybe the disparity between the Ducatis and the Yamaha, not as much with that little bit...
Like that. Obviously that is the speed trap, so that doesn't lie, but the Yamaha comes out of the corners, so the first, let's say, through those fast corners, that takes some commitment. That
here he comes up towards turn 15. Zarco last week, and you have to feel that if you're on the front 4 rows, you've got a decent enough chance of, and this is a short run.
Motorcycles. That was Jack Miller, if you missed that in his interview, when asked about, I think it was Natalie who asked him about his starts. A great reaction in that race.
Second MotoGP race for Jorge Martin. And as it stands, he's sitting in, just looks like a MotoGP rider. He's not too tall, he's strong, he's stocky, he's brave.
And what a smart signing. If you remember, Ducati
poached him
really early on, because he'd been sort of groomed. Not that he wanted to commentate next to us, Gav. I don't think that was high in his priority of list things to do. Maybe that's 20 years from now.
Pecco Bagnaia down there, pole position last week, currently in 5th place on the grid. It's going to be all changed though now. We'll be improving all the time, but look at the dust coming off the back of Oliveira's bike. If you get offline for a second,
you're down.
Yeah, holding people up, forcing people to go different lines to try and get past you.
Yeah, and as we've seen over the years, especially at this track, creates more spin, which creates more wear.
These are things to think about tomorrow. For now, Pecco Bagnaia last week at 52.7, and in Q1 Mira 53.9. Well, who's the 12th rider not to have set a lap yet?
That can't be right. It said that it said that Mira had got a hard front.
It's Oliveira actually who hasn't set a lap yet, but it does say hard if you look on the left hand side of your screens. If it's Bagnaia, all on used fronts. Meanwhile, Miller, Espargaro on new front tyres.
It's a big start last time and worked his way through, but as we think it's going to be a slower race, Maverick normally doesn't get good starts. He didn't get a
thinking similar kind of strategies they're going to be employing. Vinales though on a decent lap, 9,000s outside. Jorge Martin there on the top, he's the one they're shooting at then in these final stages of qualifying 2. Maverick Vinales having the wherewithal to have a straight here.
Yeah, I think he'll keep this. This should be enough for him. Should be. It is, yes.
2/10 of. Remember, he came through Q1, so he probably only had 1 tyre to play with, and decided, unlike Mir, who went out on old tyres, to just sit tight. Maverick Vinales through the first sector, Neil, 1/4 of a second under his own best time. He wants this one.
3 always work well for that Yamaha.
Well, it's been 1 and 4 have been Ducati sectors, they say. The Ducati through turn 2 looks amazing. Moved ahead of Mir and into 9th place. Mir takes it back from him, but 3rd row only for Joan Mir. He really wants to get high.
That's what he's got. This is Maverick's last flying lap, isn't it? Yeah, with only 18 seconds to go.
Still not talking about the Ducatis of Bagnaia. Out. This is Vinales' last go, and this is the benchmark. 53.2 lost time in sector 4, but Maverick through the first sector.
Yeah, that's the Ducati sector though, isn't it? That's all about the horsepower as you go over the line through turn 1 and 2.
And meanwhile, Espargaro's dropped off in the 2nd sector. Miller doesn't like it. It looked like he's got it. Bagnaia also 1/4 of a second.
4 are the Ducati sectors. It's all about horsepower. He's at the last corner now. Looks like he's got it perfect.
Zarco from nowhere. And Martin got across the line. He goes.
Yes!
Martin, a 153.1. I don't believe it. Look at Francesco Miller behind him. Watch out for Jack Miller. Across the line we go. Miller can only go 4th. Quartararo is only 5th. The Pramac team principal and team manager have just got a 1-2 in MotoGP, and the 3rd.
What can he do from pole position, Gav? He's going to have a second lead by the time he gets to turn 2. Stunning.
I'm enjoying it. He made it wheelie as well, something the factory boys couldn't quite do yesterday. But Gigi Dall'Igna is around
And beat these riders, but to actually do it in your second ever ride. Yes, we know the Ducati works around here, but he beat up.
doing the same. But it's the youngster, Jorge Martin, who's managed to stick it on pole position for the satellite Pramac team.
In his head. But what I mean, once he calms down, once the adrenaline leaves his blood, he'll sit there and say, actually, we started.
Ahead of Miller, Quartararo, Bagnaia. Ahead of him, however, the satellite bikes of Johan Zarco and the rookie Red.
The objective from the weekend, we know we have a good rhythm, so we're going to try to push tomorrow from the beginning.
Great job, member.
Thank you, man.
Fantastic for the team 1 and 2 here in Qatar. That's pretty good for tomorrow the race.
Big congratulations.
Merci. If we can fight for a top 6, will be great, and I will be super happy.
Wonderful achievement, Jorge.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.